President Donald Trump's travel ban has been dealt yet another blow. A second federal judge, this time in Maryland, has now blocked part of the president's revised executive order. And that ruling came just hours after a judge in Hawaii put the entire order on hold. The president's latest ban would prevent travelers from 6 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States for 90 days. The new order would not apply to current visa holders. It also eliminated language giving preference to Christian immigrants. At a rally last night in Nashville, the president slammed the decision from the federal judge in Hawaii.
The order he blocked was a watered-down version of the first order. I think we ought to go back to the first one and go all the way, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. The danger is clear. The law is clear. The need for my executive order is clear. This ruling makes us look weak, which, by the way, we no longer are, believe me.
Joining me now from Dallas is nationally syndicated radio host and founder of The Blaze, Glenn Beck. Glenn, thanks so much for joining me.
You bet.
So I just want to first get into sort of the emotional substance of the president's remarks last night. The feeling that, quote, the danger is clear, the law is clear, and the need for this kind of executive order is clear. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no, and I want to be really careful on this. I do believe that there is a threat from Islamists, not from Muslims, but Islamists, and there's a great difference between those two. And I don't think the media and the White House and the Congress and pundits have really explained the difference to the American people. So there is a threat from Islamists that we just, as a society, through the government, have just dismissed. That's been a mistake. Back during the Bush administration, I went down and I met with some of the command leadership of special forces. And I asked them, this is 2006, what are you preparing for? What kind of threat are you worried about that's over the horizon? And they talked about the Bubba effect. Now, this is during the Bush administration. They said they feel that one of the threats that we could be facing in the future was that Bubba would go into some convenience store in Alabama and shoot a Sikh because he saw a turban and just assumed that he was a Muslim and he was a bad guy, after there had been yet another large tragedy. And what they feared was that the small community would recognize that what Bubba did was wrong. Yeah. Would stop the federal forces from coming in, because they would say, you've lied to us. You've tried to tell us that there is no threat, and there is. Yes, what Bubba did was wrong, but there is a threat.
Do you, just to parse the definition here, what in your mind is an Islamist versus a Muslim?
Okay, a Muslim, I have Muslim friends, and I think the vast majority in America, vast majority, are Muslims, and those are just law-abiding citizens that want to live in peace, and they're no different than a Catholic or a Mormon or whatever. An Islamist is somebody who believes that that church and state, that the Quran supersedes the Constitution or any country, and so it must be run by religious rule. That's the difference. If you believe that the Quran is the ultimate source that supersedes all of man's laws, including the Constitution or wherever you live, and you want a theocratic dictatorship, that's an Islamist.
Glenn,
that's ISIS.
There seems to be no such distinction in this president's mind.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
So I mean, to the broader picture here, what is the fallout from these executive orders as it concerns the Trump presidency?
The fallout is that the same kind of fallout that we had with Woodrow Wilson, and the same kind of fallout that we had with FDR. If there is a December 7th, God forbid, we could see some sort of an internment camp situation. You remember FDR, a big progressive president, had a problem with the Japanese going in. He felt there was a real danger. His own Department of War went out and said there's not a problem, but then December 7th happened. That ball was already rolling, and they put people in internment camps because of that shock. We are doing such a poor job on both sides of the aisle of discussing the difference between Islam or Muslims and Islamists, that I think we're headed, possibly, with a big tragedy, we could head someplace we've been before and we don't want to go again.
Glenn, I want to talk about sort of the broader scope of all of this. The hardline immigration stance often dovetails with the rise in nationalism, and we've seen a rise in nationalism around the globe. But yesterday we got some results from the Netherlands where a man who's being called the Dutch Donald Trump, Geert Wilders, was defeated in an election, or didn't get the win that I think a lot of folks thought he might. I want to ask you about something that Ben Rhodes, the president's former national security advisor, tweeted this morning. He said, "It may be that Trump's election broke the fever of right-wing ethnic nationalism in Europe, a high watermark instead of a building wave." What do you think of that? Is this strain of nationalism hitting its peak, or is it actually the beginning of a wave?
I think it's the beginning of the wave. I believe we will see the peak of the wave possibly in the 20s, in 2020, 2025. I think you're at the very beginning of it. There are other forces. I think what you saw in the Netherlands is something inherent to the people who live in the Netherlands. They saved so many Jews in World War II. They look at themselves as a center for refugees. And there's something extraordinary about the people from that part of the country, or that part of the world. And so I think that's different. And I don't think that France will go with Le Pen, but that should not calm your fears of the rise of nationalism and populism, especially with the United States and Steve Bannon leading the way.
Let's pivot back to this Trump White House in specific. The president released his budget, which is sort of a dream document of cuts he'd like to see. Included in it is a proposed $54 billion hike in defense spending. That is a 10% hike, and it comes at the cost of cuts elsewhere, including cutting State Department funding by 29%, places like the EPA by 31%. Budgets are often seen as moral documents. Are these the right moral choices for the country to be making at this point, Glenn?
I think the best thing that we could do, I would like to see cuts across the board. I mean, I'd really like to see Calvin Coolidge kind of cuts that, are more than shocking to most Americans today. We had a depression of 1920 that most Americans don't remember, and historians call it the forgotten depression because it was over within a year. They went in, Harding and Coolidge, they cut the federal budget by, I believe, 50%. Then the next year, they cut it by another 50%, and I think 3 years later, he cut it again. We're told that the cupboards are bare. There's a lot of spending that can be cut across the board.
So you don't see any issue with cutting the State Department funding at a moment like this when we're looking at international unrest?
I'm not a budget expert. I just think that the United States of America, with the great entrepreneurs that we have and startups that can start up and build something like Google in a garage, we certainly can figure out ways to cut our billions in spending and still be spending more money than anybody else in the world. In the State Department, as a conservative, I have a problem with the State Department the way it has run for so long.
Glenn, there's so much to talk about in this particular administration. I want to turn your attention to an interview the president had last night on Fox News, where he addressed his claims that President Obama wiretapped his offices in Trump Tower. Let's just take a listen, and then I'll catch you on the back end of the sound.
Why not wait to tweet about it until you can prove it? Don't you devalue your words when you can't provide evidence?
Because the New York Times wrote about it. Not that I respect the New York Times. I call it the failing New York Times. But they did write on January 20th using the word wiretap. Other people have come out with
right, but you're the president. You have the ability to gather all the evidence you want.
I do, but I think that, frankly, we have a lot right now. And I think if you watched the Brett Baer and what he was saying and what he was talking about and how he mentioned the word wiretap, you would feel very confident that you could mention the name. He mentioned it.
Glenn, as someone who used to work for Fox News, does anything concern you about President Trump's answer there?
I don't know what it has to do with Fox News other than all of it. I think we are going off in a dangerous direction. The president has access to all the information he would need to prove it or not. And on this, there is no reason to create boogeymen that he can't himself prove one way or the other. He should be quiet until he can show us the evidence. There's no good that comes out of inflicting damage on another institution. We must have faith in something, and we're losing our faith in everything. It's concerning to me that we are now going down this road of deep state. We have to logically come together, people on the right and the left that are fair-minded, and say, let's fix reason firmly in her seat and question everything honestly and look at all of it and disprove this or prove this. We can't go another year, let alone another 4 years, with somebody claiming that the government is somehow or another run by shadow people.
Well, and I want to get back to the deep state piece, Glenn, but the fact that the president is citing Fox News, and we've seen a pattern where this president in particular is much of his directives seem to be coming from a network that you once worked for. That seems unprecedented in American politics.
You know, I didn't believe that Fox News was an organ of the GOP, and I don't think Fox News as a whole is. But I do believe that when Roger was there, there were shows or people that would clearly do the bidding for the GOP, and I don't think that's changed. And I'm kind of surprised because I thought Roger Ailes was the grand architect of that myself. I have nothing to prove, just a gut sense on that when I was there.
You talk about the deep state and your dismay at its the burgeoning deep state, or the narrative of the deep state. I know that you've in many ways sort of turned a leaf, if you will, when we talk about partisanship and fear and conspiracy and paranoia. But I just want to replay some earlier comments you made about the previous president, and as we talk about the sort of framework for establishing the deep state. If we could just listen to some remarks you had to say about President Obama, I believe in 2010.
He needlessly throws his hat into the ring to defend the Ground Zero Mosque. He hosts Ramadan dinners, which a president can do. But then you just add all of this stuff up. His wife goes against the advice of the advisors, jets to Spain for a vacation. What does she do there? She hits up the Alhambra Palace Mosque. Fine, it's a tourist attraction. But is there anything more to this? Are they sending messages? I don't know. I don't know. I've never had to look for messages before.
Glenn, messages being sent.
Messages being sent, and I stand by this, and this is not just in Barack Obama. This is a left and right problem that the Muslim Brotherhood, I believe, because in many cases, people don't take them seriously.
But you believe that the First Lady was trying to send a subliminal message about perhaps allegiance to the Muslim Brotherhood by visiting the Alhambra? No. It goes back
to what I've talked about on the what do you call it? The Bubba effect. That there is this push to make all Islamists into Muslims. There are Muslims and there are Islamists, and we need to separate the two. And there was never a separation in the Obama administration, and quite honestly, towards the end of the Bush administration, because of Grover Norquist. There was never a separation between those two. It's very easy to see who's been with the Muslim Brotherhood, who has a history with the Muslim Brotherhood. That if you can get a Muslim to say Muslim Brotherhood is not good, it's not safe, then you don't have a problem. It's this lumping the good guys in with the bad guys that is the problem.
But Glenn,
and selling it.
I guess, you know, there was a sort of a paranoia that was suggested in those comments about the previous administration. Does that not feed into the paranoia we're feeling right now with, you know?
I think you could, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I think you could read it that way, yes.
I want to talk a little bit about sort of what you're doing now, because I know that in many ways you're sort of changing your tack, if you will. And
but wait, Alex, can I just say one? Can I just say actually two things that I've been thinking of here? I want to make sure I'm clear on. When I said this about Fox News a few minutes ago, I want to make sure that there's a difference between some people that work at Fox News and Fox News. I want to make sure that's clear. The second thing is, I want to make sure that what you're feeling, what people now are feeling about Donald Trump, and I know a lot of people on the left that are looking at Donald Trump and they're saying, and I'm one of them, that are saying, you know, let's look at the people around him, and they're being dismissed by the right. But the news media is concerned about the people that are surrounding, and it can sound like a conspiracy theory, but it's not. I'm concerned about the people surrounding the president.
Is Steve Bannon in that number of people that you're concerned about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But there were other people surrounding the last president that the left dismissed, and so it might sound like a conspiracy, but you want to look at the people they surround themselves with. Like, for instance, I was credited, and I think wrongly so, by the right for Van Jones being escorted out of the White House. I didn't want him fired. I just wanted an explanation of what part of the beliefs of Van Jones that were at that time, apparently not now, what part does the president agree with? And who is he? And how did he, what role did he play with the president? Those are the questions that we should be asking now about Donald Trump.
So, but Glenn, how do you get the American public to a place of more empathy and understanding, while at the same time drawing so much attention to the fear?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, the left is going through the fear now. I'm going through it again with you. The fear is real. You don't want to. You want to be able to explain it, be able to think out loud, and then to be able to ask the questions. Is this real? Is this not? And have a logical conversation. But what's happening right now, it's the same as what happened in the past, just reversed. Now, when people are asking logical questions about Steve Bannon and Russia, now people are saying, what are you, a conspiracy theorist? Oh yeah, Russia, the big bad guys are going to come. Oh yeah, Steve Bannon, the boogeyman. No, please. I want to be wrong about Steve Bannon. I want to be wrong about Russia, but something's not right. So let's have a rational conversation so you can dismiss all of those things. And where the conspiracy theories come is, for instance, wiretapping. If they first would have responded with, okay, we didn't mean wiretapping, it would have helped.
Right.
If the first, but they don't. And so then it becomes this deep state kind of garbage.
It seems like a slippery slope.
Yes.
Glenn, let me ask you one last question. In terms of finding hope amid all this fear and division, where do you find it? I know you've been doing international work. I know you've been visiting borders. You've been experiencing the world in a different way. How are you maintaining hope in a sense, in a moment like this?
I am maintaining hope by finding that we have so much in common on things that actually matter, that we all want real, true freedom, that we all want to protect our children and children of others. I was just in Thailand with Operation Rescue, OURrescue.org, where we go in and we try to put pedophiles behind bars, and we rescue children and then take these kids who are literal slaves, not just sex slaves, literal slaves, and give them their life back and protect them until they turn 18. It's remarkable what's happening, and I'm seeing people from all walks of life starting to come and say, you know what, I kind of want to put politics past me. I don't know why we all care about what the president tweets as much as we do.
Well, it's an interesting time. Glenn Beck, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you very much.